The biggest challenge as a leader there is to balance the speed and quality of execution with longer strategic initiatives. Obviously, that's true in any company, but the goal is to go fast and far. Guide, you're an endurance sport enthusiast like me. It's impossible to run a marathon at the speed of a 100-meter sprint. That's the first leadership lesson I've learned. When I got my first team, I was naive and I thought I could do both. But really, you can't go fast alone for a very short period of time. But if you want to go fast and far and juggle real-time execution and longer-term strategic goals, you need a proper relay team.
Hi, I'm Mikhail Kozlovskiy, a principal in Heidrick and Struggles Dubai office, and I'm a member of the financial services practice. I'm joined today by my London-based colleague, Guy.
Thanks, Mikhail. I'm Guy Shaul. I'm a partner in the technology practice here at Heidrick. I'm also the global lead for our Web3, crypto, and digital asset sector.
For today's podcast, we're excited to have with us Benjamin Grolimund. Ben is the general manager for UAE at Rain. Rain is the first fully regulated virtual assets brokerage and custodian in the Abu Dhabi global markets. Rain has recently made it to the Forbes top 50 FinTech for the Middle East and North Africa region. Prior to joining Rain, Ben was the founder and CEO of a payments company, Finally. He also spent 14 years at Bloomberg, with his most recent tenure as the managing director and the regional head for the Middle East and Africa. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ben.
Thank you, Mikhail. Good afternoon to you both. And thank you for having me on the podcast. It's great to be here.
To kick off the conversation, Ben, what drew you to fintech and digital asset space?
Well, that's a bit of a coincidence. I don't think I grew up as a child thinking that I was going to be in the digital asset space. I graduated in the summer of 2008 when Lehman Brothers went bankrupt in the middle of the subprime crisis. The banks were laying off by the thousands. And I was hired by Bloomberg in their London headquarters in September 2008. And this is how I started my career in fintech, well before fintech was even a word, actually. I discovered the fintech world at the time, and I found that fascinating. Fast forward 17 years, I'm still in fintech.
Obviously, in our digital assets and Web3 space, people have many different paths that lead them into it. How do you think your prior roles, experiences, and perspectives has shaped the type of leader you are today and how you've solved for the challenges that you faced?
I really think that the kind of leader I am today has been shaped by Bloomberg. As you've explained in the introduction, nearly 14 years at Bloomberg, where I led my first teams and progressed to my first senior leadership position when I ran the Middle East and African business. I'm very grateful for Bloomberg because this is where I've learned all of that leadership. Bloomberg is a company that is extremely metrics focused, and performance of teams or individuals can be assessed nearly real time. The biggest challenge as a leader there is to balance the speed and quality of execution with longer strategic initiatives. Obviously, that's true in any company, but the goal is to go fast and far. Guide, you're an endurance sport enthusiast like me. It's impossible to run a marathon at the speed of a 100-meter sprint. That's the first leadership lesson I've learned. When I got my first team, I was naive and I thought I could do both. But really, you can't go fast alone for a very short period of time. But if you want to go fast and far and juggle real-time execution and longer-term strategic goals, you need a proper relay team. This means that you need to empower the people around you with the most important and exciting projects. If you want a team that is motivated, you need to trust them with the most important pieces of the business. You also need to show that you're pulling your own weight. You need to lead by example. You need to embody the culture you really want to see in these teams or in the company you're leading. These are the most important leadership lessons that I've learned during my first years as a leader.
And your experience building your own business and successfully exiting that before you came into the world of crypto, how did that alter the way you approach problems today?
You start building your own firm, being an entrepreneur, and hiring your first people. You're exposing yourself to a completely different skill set requirement. At Bloomberg, or in a large company, you can spend a lot of time to think about how can you optimize every little digit of performance, because you have huge resources and a very well-structured company that serves as a platform to supercharge what you want to do. When you're an entrepreneur, you have to do it all on your own. You need to be a jack of all trades. It really shows the fact that agility is required when you're an entrepreneur, and you really need to prioritize for the greater good more than every little detail. I think that's the biggest differential.
Ben, and one of the recent studies found that countries in the Middle East saw a 166% increase year on year in daily crypto traders in 2024 alone, while the UAE has clearly emerged as one of the fastest growing markets for cryptocurrency adoption worldwide. In your experience, what has been the biggest driver for the Middle East crypto landscape? And did you have to adapt your strategy and leadership style in response?
I think that in the Middle East specifically, we see different factors that fuel this growth. The first factor is the Middle East demographics. The median age is 26 years old. The smartphone adoption in the Gulf region is one of the highest in the world. So you put young individuals that are tech savvy with very clear and transparent cryptocurrency regulations for digital assets and Web3 companies. That has become a hub for companies legal to deal with and to invest in. Lastly, it's just the overall world realizing that digital assets bring a value proposition, especially for moving money. It's also a hedge against currency volatility in emerging markets. And for that reason, a lot of people are saving in digital assets. So if you put all of these different factors in the mix, it is not surprising to see triple-digit growth in the digital asset space in 2024. I think it's pretty clear. There's been an institutionalization of the digital asset space. And that also means that companies like Rain need to adapt to deal with big corporations and not just deal with retail individuals anymore. And that requires a different sets of skills that we need to adapt to as a firm, different sets of talents that we need to hire or that we need to upskill. From a leadership standpoint, you need different governance, you need different policies, you need different compliance levels. The overall behavior needs to evolve and cater for a more corporate and institutional-based business.
Thinking around organizations' ability to meet their compliance and controls and security requirements, and that tends to be an area I certainly hear clients having to work hard to ensure they can find the depth of talent to bring on board. And I've also heard organizations in the Middle East calling that out as an area of particular focus. What's your view on depth of talent in that area, and how hard or easy have you found it to hire the right people with that type of background?
Security, compliance. First of all, there are two critical challenges any financial institution faces, regardless of traditional financial assets or digital assets. When it comes to talent in both compliance and security, the problem is that they're in high demand. Essentially, all of the finance and banking world are looking for them. In the UAE, in a 10 million people country, you then build a burgeoning digital asset ecosystem. You've had over 1,200 firms that have applied for licenses in the last 2 years to be regulated. Part of the regulation imposes that you hire specific compliance, IT security, risk management personnel that needs to be approved and vetted by the regulator. Imagine you now have 1,000 firms that are looking for these people to get their licenses. That obviously creates an imbalance between demand and the talent you can find.
Ben, we understand that Rain recently experienced a security breach. Could you share with us a bit more details, and how did you address the situation, in particular from your perspective as a leader?
We've suffered a security breach recently, which got us into crisis mode. From a leadership standpoint, I think when a crisis happens, it's important to make sure that the priorities are very clear immediately. When you have a fire in your house, the last thing you want is for everyone to panic and run around doing counterproductive things. When we realized we had a security breach, the first stage was to isolate the issue and ensure that it can't spread any further. And I think that at this point, it was very clear to all of us that the customers needs to come first. Yes, it's a matter of doing what's right. And then the last stage is to make sure that it never happens again, which leads to a number of different things. Updating your security systems and policies, auditing your infrastructure, stress testing it, train and retrain all of your employees and leaders. At the end of the day, education on cybersecurity is absolutely critical. The human factor is the number one reason for security breaches. So often it's because somebody clicked the wrong link or opened the wrong email. Training is a big part of what we put in place at Rain to make sure that we've added additional layers of training and education resources to make sure that it never happens again. But it's a great lesson. And overall, we came out stronger than ever. We're a lot more bulletproof than we could have been in the past. That's work in progress. And it will continue to be for the foreseeable future. Bad actors will continue to upgrade their techniques to target companies like us. And we just have to keep up and make sure that we have the most updated systems, policies, and trainings in place.
Thank you so much for making the time to speak to us. It's been truly insightful.
With pleasure. Thank you for having me.